My name's Ethan Carter, founder of Secure Sphere Technologies, a guy who went from counting nickels in Chicago to gracing the cover of Forbes. Tonight was supposed to be my crowning moment, my engagement dinner to Claire Hargrove, the polished princess of Wall Street royalty. 400 guests, champagne flowing like a river, photographers snapping every move. On paper, it was perfect. In my gut, it felt like a damn lie. The room glittered like a movie set. Crystal chandeliers threw light across white orchid centerpieces that probably cost more than my first car. The air smelled of caviar and Chanel No. 5, thick with the buzz of power players, tech moguls, senators, hedge fund sharks. Claire floated through it all in a silver gown that hugged her like it was custom-made by angels, her blonde hair pinned up just right, whispering orders to the staff with that quiet authority she'd been born with. She was beautiful, no question, the kind of beautiful you'd see on a magazine cover, not next to you at a dive bar. Her dad, Victor Hargrove, stood nearby, all gray hair and cigar smoke, clapping backs and sealing deals. This wasn't just a party. It was a merger. Two empires tying the knot, with me as the lucky groom. I adjusted my tie, feeling the silk slip under my fingers, and forced a smile for a tech reporter who'd cornered me by the bar. "Ethan, tell us, how's it feel to lock down Claire Hargrove?" he asked, recorder shoved in my face. I gave him the line I'd rehearsed. "Like I've won the lottery twice, once with Secure Sphere, now with her." He laughed, scribbling it down, and I took a sip of my bourbon, letting it burn my throat. Truth was, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a guy playing a part reading a script I hadn't written. Claire and I made sense. Her family's billions, my tech empire, a match made in boardroom heaven. But as I stood there, the room spinning with chatter and clinking glasses, something gnawed at me. A hollow ache I'd buried so deep, I'd almost forgotten it was there. That's when I saw her. She moved through the crowd like a shadow, a tray of wine glasses balanced on one hand, her dark braids pulled back tight. At first, it was just a flicker. The way she tilted her head, the quick, graceful flick of her wrist as she served a guest. Familiar, but out of place in this sea of tuxedos and diamonds. Then she turned, and the world stopped spinning. Lila Mensah. Those eyes, deep brown, sharp as a blade, the kind that used to cut right through my bullshit back in college. 10 years since I'd last seen her. 10 years since I'd walked away. And there she was, pouring wine at my damn engagement dinner. My glass slipped in my hand, bourbon splashing onto the marble floor. The reporter frowned. "You okay, man?" I nodded, muttering something about needing air, but my feet were already moving. Across the room, Lila's gaze locked with mine for 3 heartbeats. Shock, then something darker, pain maybe, before she snapped her head away, disappearing toward the service doors. My chest tightened like someone had punched me square in the ribs. What the hell was she doing here? Serving drinks? The Lila I knew painted canvases that could make you cry, not trays of overpriced Merlot for overpaid suits. "Ethan, darling, you're drifting." Claire's voice cut through the haze, her manicured hand sliding onto my arm. She smelled like lilies and money, her blue eyes narrowing as she followed my stare. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," I lied, voice rougher than I meant it to be. "Thought I saw someone I knew." "Well, come on then. The Harringtons want your take on the crypto market." She tugged me toward a cluster of gray-haired investors, her nails digging in just enough to remind me who I was supposed to be tonight. I glanced back over my shoulder, catching Lila's silhouette as she re-entered with another tray. She wouldn't look at me this time, her face a mask of professionalism, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the tray a little too tight. Dinner rolled on, a blur of courses I barely tasted. Foie gras, truffle risotto, some dessert that looked like modern art. I sat at the head table, Claire on my left, Victor on my right, nodding through their small talk about yacht trips and tax loopholes. But my eyes kept drifting, finding Lila every time she crossed the room. Once, she leaned past me to pour wine for the guy next to me, and I caught a whiff of her perfume. Jasmine, same as always, mixed with something new, sharper. My hand shook as I reached for my water, splashing it on the tablecloth. Claire shot me a look, one eyebrow arched, but said nothing. By the time the speeches started, I was a mess inside, a tangle of guilt and adrenaline I couldn't shake. Victor went first, raising his glass to a union of vision and legacy, his voice booming like a preacher at a revival. Claire's mom followed, gushing about her daughter's Princeton days and charity boards. Then it was my turn. The event coordinator waved me up, and the room went quiet, 400 pairs of eyes pinning me to the spot. I stood, smoothing my jacket, feeling the folded speech in my pocket, a polished little number about partnerships and bright futures. Claire smiled up at me, expectant, perfect. I pulled out the paper, then froze. Across the room, Lila was stacking empty glasses, her back to me, but I could tell she was listening. The curve of her neck, the way her braids fell just past her shoulders. It hit me like a freight train. 10 years ago, I'd promised her the world, a gallery for her art, a life we'd build together. Instead, I'd chased a paycheck and left her behind. And now here I was, about to lock myself into a life that felt like a fancy cage. I had a speech ready, I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. The mic crackled, amplifying every word. About how Claire and I are a perfect match, and on paper, we are. A murmur rippled through the crowd, Claire's smile tightening. I loosened my tie, the air suddenly too thick. But I'm not a spreadsheet, neither is she. Ethan, Claire hissed, standing now, her hand on my arm. What are you doing? I looked at her, regret washing over me. I'm sorry, Claire. You deserve someone who's all in, not a guy still stuck on a road he didn't take. The room erupted, gasps, whispers, the clatter of a dropped fork. Victor's face turned red, his fist slamming the table. You little... he started, but I was already moving, cutting through the crowd toward Lila. Phones were out, cameras flashing, but I didn't care. She stood frozen by the service table, a tray of glasses in her hands, eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. You're making a scene, she whispered as I reached her, her voice low and tight. This is my job, Ethan. I know, I said, taking the tray gently and setting it aside. Her hands were trembling, and up close I saw the lines around her eyes, the weight of years I'd missed. But I can't let you walk out of my life again without saying it. I screwed up, Lila. 10 years ago, I traded love for a paycheck. Tonight, I'm done pretending that was the right call. Behind me, Claire's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a blade. Security! Get him out of here! Victor was barking orders, guests scrambling for the best gossip. Lila stepped back, shaking her head. You don't even know me anymore, she said. But there was a crack in her voice, a flicker of something that wasn't just anger. I don't, I admitted, pulling a card from my wallet and scribbling my number on it. But I'd rather start over with you than keep faking it with anyone else. I pressed it onto her tray and turned, walking out as security closed in. The night air hit me hard, rain speckling my face as I stepped onto the slick New York pavement. I'd just torched a multi-billion-dollar deal, humiliated one of the most powerful families in the country, and maybe lost my shot with Lila anyway. So why the hell did I feel lighter than I had in years? I stood there, staring up at the glowing Waldorf, rain soaking through my tux, and muttered to myself, what the hell did I just do? Hey, if you're hooked on Ethan's wild night, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Would you walk away from everything for a second chance? Stick around because this story's just getting started. Hey there, good folks. Welcome back. After that mess at the Waldorf last time, you're probably wondering how I ended up in such a spot, right? Well, let's rewind the clock 10 years. Back to a version of me you wouldn't recognize if you saw me today. No billion-dollar tech empire, no tuxedo, just a broke-ass college kid from Chicago's South Side, scraping by on dreams and stubbornness. That's where I met her, Lila Mensah, the girl who turned my world upside down with a paintbrush and a smile. Stick with me, because this is where it all started. And trust me, it's a hell of a ride. Picture Chicago in 2015, the kind of gray, gritty winter that sinks into your bones. I was 19, a scholarship kid at a no-name state university, living in a crumbling apartment block where the heat only worked half the time. South Side wasn't exactly a postcard, sirens wailing at night, busted streetlights flickering like they were giving up. My mom worked double shifts at a diner, coming home with sore feet and a stubborn smile, always slipping me a few bucks she couldn't spare. "You're gonna make it out, Ethan," she'd say, her voice rough from years of shouting over fryers. "Just don't forget where you came from." I'd nod, hunched over a second-hand laptop in our kitchen, the glow of the screen cutting through the dark when the power got shut off again. That's where I was, coding like my life depended on it, because it damn well did, when I first saw Lila. She set up her easel outside the computer lab window 3 days a week, her hands moving over the canvas like she was pulling colors out of thin air. She was a junior, an art major, with a vibe I couldn't pin down, fearless, alive, like she didn't care the world was watching. Her family had moved from Ghana when she was a kid, and you could see it in her, this mix of grit and grace, like she'd been forged in a fire I'd never understand. I'd peek out between lines of code, pretending I wasn't staring, but damn, she was hard to ignore. Those wild curls bouncing in the wind, paint smudges on her fingers, and eyes that could stop a train. One Tuesday the sky cracked open, a cold rain hammering down like it wanted to drown the city. I watched her scramble to cover her painting, water streaking the colors into a blurry mess. Before I knew it, I was out there, holding my only umbrella over her head, a beat-up black thing I'd snagged from a thrift store for $2. "You're gonna catch a cold out here," I said, sounding dumber than I felt, my sneakers soaking through. She looked up, rain dripping off her nose, and grinned, not a polite smile, but a real one, the kind that hits you in the chest. "Then buy me coffee, computer boy. I don't bite." Her voice had this lilt, warm and teasing, and just like that, I was hooked. Coffee turned into greasy diner burgers, then late-night walks along the lakefront, the wind whipping off Lake Michigan so hard it stole our breath. We'd sit on a bench under a busted street lamp, her sketching while I debugged code on my laptop, the battery dying half the time. "What's this one gonna be?" she'd ask, nodding at my screen. "Something to keep the bad guys out," I'd say, grinning. "Gotta make sure my mom's diner tips stay safe." She'd laugh, her pencil scratching across the page, and I'd sneak glances at her drawings, bold lines, bright colors, stuff that made my gray world feel alive. We were broke as hell, but we had each other. She'd drag me to free art shows and sketchy warehouses, pointing out brushstrokes like they were secret codes. I'd sneak her into the lab after hours, showing her how my apps could lock a phone tighter than Fort Knox. One night, under a flickering neon sign outside a pizza joint, I kissed her, tasting tomato sauce and rain, and it felt like the first real thing I'd ever done. "You're trouble, Ethan Carter," she said, pulling back with a smirk. "Good thing I like trouble," I shot back, and we laughed until our sides hurt. Things got serious fast. She'd crash at my place when her dorm got too loud, sketching on the floor while I coded at the table. Her parents had burned through their savings to get her here, and she carried that weight, the need to make it worth it. "Art's my way out," she'd say, her voice fierce. "Same way your tech's yours." I got it. That hunger, that fire. We'd stay up till dawn, dreaming out loud. "I'll build you a gallery one day," I told her once, my arm around her as we watched the city lights from my fire escape. "Your name in big letters, Lila Mensah, artist extraordinaire." She poked my ribs, laughing. "And I'll keep you human when you're some big-shot CEO, deal?" That was the plan. Her art, my tech, a future we'd carve out together. I started working on my first real app, a security program to lock down business networks. It was rough, buggy as hell, but I poured everything into it. Lila believed in me, even when it crashed spectacularly the first 3 times. She'd sit there painting while I cursed at the screen and say stuff like, "You'll get it, Ethan. You're too stubborn." Here's the continuation of part 2. Rainy days and big dreams, completing the remaining portion to reach approximately 2,000 words. This section builds up to the first major climax. Ethan's promise to Lila and his decision to leave for Silicon Valley, setting the stage for their eventual separation. The tone remains conversational and grounded in American culture, with vivid descriptions and natural dialogue, ending with the call to action as requested to quit. Her faith kept me going, even when I wanted to chuck the damn laptop out the window. One night, maybe 6 months into us, we were sprawled on my lumpy mattress. No frame, just a thrift store find, with the window cracked open, letting in the damp Chicago air. She was sketching me, her pencil scratching soft against the paper, while I tapped away at my latest code. The room smelled like rain, and the cheap candles she'd lit to cover the mildew stink. "What's this one?" I asked, nodding at her sketchpad. She tilted it toward me, my face, rough around the edges, but with this spark in my eyes I didn't recognize. "It's you, dummy," she said, smirking. "The real you, not the one you show the world." I stared at it, my throat tight. "You make me look better than I am." She rolled her eyes, tossing a paint-stained rag at me. "Nah, you just don't see it yet. One day you will." That sketch, it still burned in my head, all these years later. She saw something in me I couldn't, and it scared the hell out of me how much I needed that. Things were good, better than good. We'd steal moments between classes, her dragging me to the art supply store with her last $10, me sneaking us into the campus cafeteria for free leftovers. She'd tease me about my cheap sneakers, the soles peeling off, and I'd fire back about her paint-splattered jeans, looking like a Jackson Pollock knockoff. "At least I've got style," she'd say, sticking out her tongue. We were young, broke, and stupid in love, convinced we had it all figured out. Then the big break hit. Senior year, spring semester. I'd just turned 21, still sleeping on that damn mattress, when an email popped up from a venture capital guy in Silicon Valley. Subject line, "Interested in your security app." My hands shook as I read it. Some suit named Greg Palmer wanted to fund my project, turn it into a real company. The catch? I had to move to California like yesterday. Meetings, pitches, a whole new life waiting out there. I ran straight to Lila's dorm, bursting through the door like a kid on Christmas. "Lila, you won't believe this," I yelled, waving my phone. She was mid-painting, a streak of blue on her cheek, and looked up with that half-smile I loved. "What's got you bouncing like that?" I read her the email, words tripping over each other. "They're talking real money, like millions. This could be it!" Her eyes lit up, but there was a flicker of something else. Worry, maybe. "That's huge, Ethan," she said, setting her brush down. "Like, change the world huge." I grabbed her hands, pulling her up. "It's us, Lila. Our ticket out. I'll make it big, and we'll get that gallery, the whole damn dream." She hugged me tight, her laugh muffled against my shoulder. You better not forget me when you're sipping martinis with tech bros. I kissed her forehead, tasting paint and promise. Never. You're my anchor, Mensa. That night, we celebrated cheap. A six-pack of old style from the corner store and a pizza we split on the roof of my building. The city sprawled out below us, all lights and noise, and I felt invincible. Rain started falling, soft at first, then harder, soaking us through. I pulled her under my umbrella, that same beat-up one, and we stood there, dripping wet, laughing like idiots. One day, I said, my voice low, serious now, I'll build you that gallery. Your art's gonna hang in places like the Met, Lila. I swear it. She looked at me, rain streaking down her face, and her smile softened. And I'll keep you human when you're rich, Carter. Deal? I nodded, pulling her close. Deal. That was the high point, our peak, the moment I thought we'd make it through anything. But life's got a way of kicking you when you're dreaming biggest. A week later, I got the call from Palmer. They wanted me in San Francisco by Monday, full commitment, no looking back. At the same time, Lila's phone rang. Her mom, back in Atlanta, had taken a turn for the worse. Cancer, stage 3, the kind of news that rips the air out of a room. We sat on her dorm bed, the buzz of celebration gone. I have to go home, she said, her voice small, hands twisting in her lap. She needs me. I nodded, staring at the floor. And I've got to go west. This is my shot. We told ourselves it'd be temporary, a few months, tops. We'll make it work, I said, squeezing her hand. Long distance isn't that hard, right? She forced a smile, but her eyes were wet. Right. You'll be some hotshot coder, and I'll be nursing Mom back to health. We'll be fine. I kissed her then, hard, like I could seal the promise with it. The next day, I packed a duffel bag, all I owned, and caught a Greyhound to O'Hare Airport. She came to see me off, standing in the rain outside the terminal, that umbrella over her head. Don't forget me, Ethan, she said, half joking, half not. Never, I promised, pulling her into one last hug. Her jacket smelled like turpentine and home. Then I boarded the plane, watching Chicago shrink below me, convinced I'd be back for her soon. Spoiler alert. I wasn't. That was the last time I saw her for 10 years. The last time I felt like the guy she'd sketched, real, raw, alive. Silicon Valley swallowed me whole, and somewhere along the way, I lost her. But that night on the roof, under that umbrella, with the rain pouring and our dreams louder than the storm, that's when I was richest, and I didn't even know it yet. Hey, good folks, welcome back to the story. Last time, I left you on a high note, me and Lila under the Chicago rain, dreaming big, me promising her a gallery while she promised to keep me grounded. I hopped on a plane to Silicon Valley with stars in my eyes, thinking I'd be back for her in no time. Spoiler, I wasn't. This is where the fairy tale cracks, where life gets in the way and pulls us apart, not with a bang, but with a slow, quiet bleed you don't notice till it's too late. Let's rewind to 2015 and see how it all went south. I landed in San Francisco with a duffel bag, a cheap hoodie, and a fire in my gut. Silicon Valley hit me like a freight train. All glass towers and tech bros in Patagonia vests, sipping cold brew like it was their job. My office was a corner desk in a startup incubator, a concrete box that stank of stale pizza and Red Bull. Greg Palmer, the VC guy who'd plucked me out of Chicago, didn't mess around. First day, he dragged me into a meeting with 3 suits, all slick hair and sharp eyes. "This app of yours, Carter, it's gold," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But you've got to move fast. No half-assing it." I nodded, adrenaline pumping, already coding in my head. This was it. My ticket out of Southside. My chance to make Mom proud. Back in Atlanta, Lila was fighting a different battle. Her mom's cancer had gone from bad to worse. Chemo every week, machines beeping in a hospital room that smelled like bleach and despair. She'd call me late, her voice soft through my busted earbuds, the hum of a ventilator in the background. "She's sleeping now," she'd say, trying to sound okay. "How's Callie?" I'd ramble about the app, Secure Sphere, my baby. Sprawled on a mattress in a shared apartment, the Bay Area fog creeping through the window. "It's crazy out here," I'd tell her. "Palmer's got me running non-stop, but it's gonna pay off." She'd hum, a tired little sound, and say, "Don't forget to eat, Ethan. You're no good to me starved." We started strong, texting all day, stealing calls when we could. I'd send her pics of the Golden Gate Bridge shrouded in mist, grinning like an idiot. "Your boy's making it." She'd reply with shots of her sketchpad, quick doodles of me she'd done from memory. Don't let those tech nerds steal your soul. For a while it worked. I'd crash after 18-hour coding marathons, her voice in my ear like a lifeline. She'd sneak a few minutes to draw between hospital runs, texting me updates. "Mom smiled today. Miss you." We told ourselves it was temporary. I'd lock down the funding, she'd get her mom stable, and we'd be back together by summer. But summer didn't come for us. Weeks stretched into months, and the cracks started showing. Silicon Valley was a meat grinder. Palmer had me pitching to investors in rooms with views I couldn't afford, promising security software that had changed the game. "You're close, kid," he'd say, slapping my back. "One more push." I'd nod, eyes burning from the screen, living on ramen and adrenaline. My texts to Lila got shorter, later. "Busy day, talk tomorrow," and her replies slowed too, weighed down by exhaustion. "Long night here. Catch you later." Our calls dropped from daily to every few days, then a week would slip by without a word. I could feel her slipping away, but I didn't know how to stop it. Secure Sphere was blowing up, beta tests crushing it, tech blogs sniffing around, and I was in too deep to pull back. One night I stood on the roof of the incubator, the city sprawling below, all lights and ambition, and called her. It was late, 1 a.m., my time, 4 a.m. hers. She picked up, voice groggy. "Ethan? You okay?" "Yeah," I lied, the wind cutting through my hoodie. "Just missed you. How's your mom?" "Same," she said quieter. "Docs say it's a coin toss now. I'm wiped." I heard a rustle, her shifting in a hospital chair probably. "You sound beat too." "Long day," I said, staring at the skyline. "We're close to a deal. Big money." "It's gonna happen, Lila." She paused, then, "Good. I'm proud of you." But it didn't sound like her. No tease, no spark. Just flat. I should have asked more, should have heard the strain, but I was too wired, too lost in the grind. Then came the night it broke. 3 months in, I was mid-pitch, a sleek boardroom, Palmer beside me, 5 investors in suits eyeing me like hawks. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Lila. I ignored it, focusing on the slides, encryption stats, market projections. It buzzed again, then a third time, insistent. Palmer shot me a glare, and I fumbled to silence it, sweat beading on my forehead. "Sorry," I muttered, pushing through. The pitch landed. $1 million locked in, handshakes all around, Palmer grinning like a shark. I was flying, untouchable, until I checked my phone in the hall. 3 missed calls, a voicemail. My stomach sank as I hit play, her voice trembling through the speaker. "Ethan, it's bad. Mom's crashing. They're rushing her to surgery. I'm scared. Call me, please." The message cut off, and I stood there, the buzz of victory gone, replaced by ice in my veins. I dialed back, pacing, but it rang out. Voicemail. "Lila, I'm here," I said, voice shaking. "Just got out. Call me." She did, an hour later. I was back in my room, staring at the peeling ceiling, when her name flashed up. "Hey," I answered, relief hitting me. "How is she?" "She's in surgery," Lila said, her voice raw, like she'd been crying for hours. "They don't know yet. Where were you, Ethan?" I swallowed hard. "In a meeting. The big one. We got the funding, Lila. I don't give a damn about the funding," she snapped, loud enough to make me flinch. "My mom's dying, and I've been calling you for hours. I needed you. Lila, I couldn't bail. This was our future, everything Our future?" Her laugh was jagged, cutting me off. "What future? You're out there playing tech god, and I'm here alone, watching her fade. I needed you tonight, Ethan, not your damn app." "That's not fair," I shot back, heat rising. "I'm killing myself out here for us, for your gallery, for—" "Stop it," she said, voice dropping to a whisper, cold and final. "I don't want a gallery if it means losing you. But I already have, haven't I?" The line went still, her breathing shallow on the other end. I gripped the phone, scrambling. "Lila, I'll fly out tomorrow. I'll fix this." "No," she said, barely audible. "You made your choice. Go save your millions." The call ended, a soft click that echoed louder than a scream. I called back the next day, over and over, but her number was dead, disconnected, gone. I hit up old friends, but they'd lost touch too. She'd dropped out, vanished into Atlanta's sprawl. I told myself she'd cool off, that I'd track her down once the dust settled. But the dust never did. Secure Sphere exploded, funding doubled, hires tripled, and I let it swallow me. I buried her under work, convinced she'd moved on, that I'd done the right thing. I was wrong. That night on the roof came later. Me alone, San Francisco glittering below, $1 million in the bank, and a heart running on empty. I'd made it, sure, but at what cost? The kid who'd promised Lila the world was gone, replaced by a guy who'd traded love for a paycheck. And it'd take 10 years, and one hell of a dinner, to face that truth. Hey, good people, welcome back to the chaos. Last time, I left you with me staring out over San Francisco, $1 million richer and a whole lot emptier, after losing Lila to the grind of life. Fast forward 10 years, and I'm a different guy. Ethan Carter, tech billionaire, face on Forbes, a penthouse in the Bay Area bigger than my old block. I'd built Secure Sphere into a juggernaut, locking down 80% of Fortune 500 networks, and landed myself a fiancé who checked every box. Claire Hargrove, Wall Street royalty. On paper, it was perfect. But perfection's got a funny way of cracking when the past shows up with a tray of wine. Let's dive back into that night at the Waldorf Astoria, the one where everything I'd built started to unravel. March 24th, 2025. The air in New York was sharp, spring teasing the city but not quite breaking through. The Waldorf's grand ballroom was a damn spectacle, like something out of a Gatsby fever dream. Chandeliers dripped crystal, casting light over tables draped in white linen, orchids spilling everywhere like they'd been grown just to flex. The place smelled expensive, truffles, champagne, the faint tang of ambition. 400 guests buzzed around me. CEOs in bespoke suits, politicians with fake tans, reporters itching for a scoop. I stood by the bar in a custom tux, the kind that costs more than a car, sipping bourbon to steady my nerves. Tonight wasn't just an engagement dinner. It was a coronation, me and Claire sealing a deal bigger than love. Claire was in her element, gliding through the crowd like she owned it, which, let's be real, her family kinda did. Her silver gown shimmered under the lights, her blonde hair pinned up tight, every move calculated. She'd spent weeks orchestrating this. Chefs flown in from Paris, flowers shipped from God knows where, a guest list that read like a who's who of power. "Smile, Ethan," she murmured, brushing my arm as she passed. "The Times is watching." I flashed the grin I'd practiced in the mirror, the one that said I belonged here. But inside, I was hollow. This wasn't jitters. It was a warning I couldn't name. I met Claire 2 years back at a charity gala in Manhattan. I'd dropped 10 mil on a whim, and she'd sidled up, all elegance and edge, talking tech portfolios like it was foreplay. Her dad, Victor Hargrove, ran Hargrove Capital, a Wall Street beast that could make or break companies with a phone call. Our courtship was efficient. Dinners at Michelin star spots, weekends on private islands, conversations that never got past the surface. When I proposed, the ring was a $3 million rock, the moment staged for Instagram, press release out before she'd even nodded. It wasn't passion, it was strategy. She fit my world now, polished, connected, a partner in the game I'd mastered. So why did it feel like I was signing a contract, not a vow? The night rolled on, a parade of small talk and photo ops. I shook hands with a senator, laughed at a VC's lame joke, all on autopilot. Then I saw her. Lila. She slipped through the crowd with a tray of wine glasses, her black uniform stark against the glitter, braids pulled back tight. At first it was just a hunch, the way she moved, quick and sure, like she owned her space even in a room that didn't see her. Then she turned, and those eyes hit me like a punch. Lila Mensah, 10 years older, harder around the edges but unmistakable. My glass slipped, bourbon splashing my cuff. "You good, man?" the senator asked, frowning. "Yeah, just need a sec," I muttered, already moving. Our eyes locked across the room, and for a split second, the last decade melted away. Chicago rain, her laugh, that damn umbrella. Then her face shifted, shock, hurt, a flash of something raw, before she turned away, disappearing toward the kitchen. My heart slammed against my ribs, a drumbeat I couldn't ignore. Lila here, serving drinks at my engagement. The universe was screwing with me, and I wasn't laughing. "Ethan, you're drifting again," Claire said, her voice sharp, hand on my elbow. Her nails dug in, a subtle warning. "What's with you tonight?" She followed my gaze, landing on Lila as she re-emerged with another tray. "You know her or something?" "Thought I did," I said, throat dry. "Old friend, maybe?" "Well, pull it together. The speech is in 20. She tugged me toward our table, but I couldn't shake Lila's presence. She moved like a ghost through the crowd, pouring wine with those same hands I'd watched paint masterpieces. Once, she brushed past me to serve the guy on my right, and I caught her scent. Jasmine, sharp and new, but still her. My hand shook as I grabbed my water, splashing it on Claire's pristine napkin. She glared but stayed quiet, her lips a tight line. Dinner dragged, fancy plates I barely touched, Victor droning about market trends. My eyes kept finding Lila, tracing the lines of her face, older now, carved by years I hadn't seen. What the hell happened to her? The gallery dream, her art. Why was she here, playing servant to people who'd never get her? The questions burned, but the answers scared me more. Speeches came next. Victor stood, glass raised, voice booming about legacy and powerful unions. Not a word about love. Claire's mom followed, gushing about Princeton and charity boards, the crowd chuckling on cue. Then it was me. The coordinator waved me up, and the room hushed. 400 pairs of eyes waiting for the billionaire's big moment. I stood, jacket heavy on my shoulders, the speech in my pocket, a safe, polished lie about Claire and me. I pulled it out, fingers trembling, and glanced at her. She smiled, perfect, expectant. Then I looked at Lila. She was stacking glasses across the room, her back to me, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She knew I was watching. And right there, under those damn chandeliers, it hit me. 10 years ago, I'd chosen ambition over her, told myself it was for the best. I'd built an empire, sure, but for what? A life that felt like a fancy cage, a fiancé I didn't love, a hollow ache I'd ignored too long. I had a speech ready. I started, voice steady despite the storm inside. The mic hummed, amplifying every breath. About how Claire and I make sense. And we do, on paper. A murmur rippled through the crowd, Claire's smile faltering. I loosened my tie, air rushing in. But I'm not a spreadsheet. Neither is she. Ethan, Claire hissed, standing, her hand gripping my arm. What the hell are you doing? I met her eyes, regret sinking in. I'm sorry, Claire. You deserve someone who's all in, not a guy still chasing a ghost. Gasps erupted, phones flashing. Victor's face turned purple, his fist slamming the table. I didn't wait. I cut through the crowd, weaving past stunned guests, straight for Lila. She stood by the service table, tray in hand, eyes wide as I closed the distance. You're insane, she whispered, voice tight, glancing at the chaos behind me. This is my job, Ethan. I know, I said, taking the tray and setting it down. Her hands shook, and up close, I saw the weariness in her, a decade of fight I'd missed. But I can't fake this anymore. I screwed up, Lila. 10 years ago, I walked away. Seeing you tonight, I can't do it again. She stepped back, jaw tight. You don't get to just waltz in and fix things. I'm not your redemption story. Her words cut, but her eyes flickered. Anger, sure, but something else too. Maybe not, I said, pulling a card from my wallet, scribbling my number. But I'd rather blow up my life than lose you twice. I pressed it into her hand and turned, walking out as Claire's voice rang out. Security, now! The night air hit me like a slap, rain speckling the pavement. I just torched everything, and damn, it felt good. Hey folks, buckle up, because we're diving into the wreckage. Last time, I walked out of the Waldorf Astoria, leaving a stunned crowd, a pissed-off fiancé, and a tray of wine glasses behind me. I'd just blown up a multi-billion-dollar merger, all for a shot at fixing a mistake I made 10 years ago with Lila Mensa. The rain was falling, the city lights blurring, and for the first time in forever, I felt alive. Until the fallout hit. This is where it gets rough, where the stakes climb higher than I ever expected, and where I start wondering if I've lost more than I can handle. Let's get into it. The New York night swallowed me whole as I stepped out of the Waldorf, rain soaking through my tux like a bad omen. Photographers swarmed the sidewalk, flashes popping in my face, voices shouting, "Ethan, what happened in there?" I shoved past, head down, the cold biting my skin. My driver was waiting, but I waved him off. "Go home, Mike. I need to walk." He gave me a look like I'd lost it, and maybe I had. The streets were slick, neon signs bleeding into puddles, and my phone buzzed non-stop. Claire, Victor, my PR guy, all losing their minds. I silenced it, shoving it deep in my pocket. I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. By morning, the headlines were brutal. Tech billionaire dumps Hargrove heiress at gala. Mystery waitress to blame. My stock took a nosedive, SecureSphere's board lighting up my inbox with panic. Victor Hargrove didn't waste time. He pulled his firm's investments, a cool $500 million yanked out overnight, and started whispering to his Wall Street buddies. "You're done, Carter," he texted, short and sweet. Claire's message was colder. "You'll regret this. Watch." I sat in my hotel room at the plaza, staring at the screen, the bourbon from last night still sour in my gut. I'd torched everything. The merger, my reputation, maybe my company. And for what? A card with my number on it, pressed into Lila's hand, with no guarantee she'd even call. I couldn't stay still. 2 days later, I tracked her down. A little diner in Brooklyn where a friend of a friend said she worked part-time. I needed answers, needed to know why she was serving wine instead of painting. What the hell had happened in 10 years? Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. Picture this. A ballroom dripping with money and power. The kind of place where every smile's got a price tag and every handshake's a contract. That's where I was on a crisp March night in 2025, standing under the chandeliers of the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, dressed in a tuxedo that cost more than my mom's old house. The door creaked open, and there she was, Lila, in a faded hoodie and jeans, paint smudges on her fingers like old times. Her eyes widened, then narrowed fast. "Ethan," she said, voice flat, arms crossing tight. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see you," I said, stepping closer, rain dripping off me onto her doorstep. "After the other night, I couldn't just let it end there." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You mean after you turned my shift into a tabloid circus? I almost got fired, you know. My boss doesn't love drama." She glanced behind her, tense, like she didn't want me inside. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "I didn't think. Seeing you hit me hard, Lila. I had to say it." "Say what? That you're sorry for 10 years ago?" She shook her head, jaw tight. "You don't get to waltz in here and play hero because you're feeling nostalgic." "It's not nostalgia," I shot back, voice rising. "It's regret. I screwed up back then. I picked the app over you, and I've been paying for it ever since. I can't marry Claire, not when you're still in my head." Her eyes flashed, anger boiling up. "You think this fixes anything? Showing up with your billionaire guilt? I've got a life here, Ethan. A real one, not some fairy tale you're chasing." She stepped back, hand on the door like she'd slam it shut. "Then tell me," I pressed, desperate now. "What happened to you? The gallery, your art. Why are you working tables? Let me help, Lila, please." She froze, her glare cutting through me. "Help? You want to know what happened? Mom died, Ethan. 6 months after you left. Cancer ate her up and the bills ate everything else. Dad's savings, my dreams, all of it. I dropped out, took whatever jobs I could grab. That's my life. No Silicon Valley miracle for me." My chest tightened, guilt slamming me harder than Victor's threats. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I tried to find you. Your number was gone. You vanished." "Yeah, well, you were busy building your empire," she said, voice low, venomous. "I saw the headlines. Kid from Chicago makes it big. Guess you didn't need me holding you back." "That's not true," I said, stepping closer. "I needed you more than anything. I still do." She stared at me, eyes wet but hard, and then dropped the bomb. "It's too late, Ethan. I'm engaged." The words hit like a freight train, knocking the air out of me. "Engaged?" I stammered, brain scrambling. "To who?" "His name's Jamal," she said, softer now, glancing away. "He's a teacher. Steady, kind. We're getting married next spring. He didn't walk away when shit got tough." I stood there, rain pooling at my feet, the umbrella limp in my hand. "You love him?" I asked, voice barely a rasp. She hesitated just long enough to twist the knife. "He's good to me. That's enough." But her eyes said more. Doubt, maybe, or a flicker of the old fire. I couldn't tell. "Lila, I started, but she cut me off. "Go home, Ethan. You've got your life. I've got mine. Whatever this is, It's 10 years too late. She shut the door, the click loud in the silence, leaving me staring at chipped paint and a past I couldn't fix. I wandered back to Manhattan in a daze, the city a blur of horns and wet concrete. Engaged. The word rattled in my skull, each step heavier than the last. I'd thrown away everything, Claire, the merger, my damn dignity, for a shot at her, and she was promised to someone else. My phone buzzed again. Claire this time, a voicemail. You're a fool, Ethan. My father's digging into your little waitress. Enjoy the headlines. I deleted it, too numb to care. Back at the plaza, I stood at the window, the skyline mocking me with its glitter. Victor's revenge was coming. Rumors hit X that Lila had a gambling debt from years back, a half-truth Claire's team twisted to smear her. My PR guy called, frantic, "Fix this, Ethan, or Secure Sphere's toast." But all I could think about was Lila, her life, her fiancé, the mess I'd dragged her into. Had I ruined her again, chasing a ghost I couldn't let go? I pulled out a card, wrote my number again, the private one, not the CEO bullshit, and mailed it to her diner with a note. I'm sorry for the chaos. If there's any chance, I'm here. E. Then I stood in front of the mirror, tuck still damp, and asked myself the hard question. Was this redemption or selfishness? Had I lost her for good this time? The answer stared back, cold and unclear, and damn if it didn't scare me to death. Hey, friends, we've made it to the end of this wild ride. Last time I left you with me standing in the rain outside Lila's door, gutted by the news she was engaged to some guy named Jamal. I'd blown up my life, ditched Claire, pissed off her Wall Street titan dad, tanked my company's stock, all for a shot at fixing a 10-year-old mistake, only to find out I might have been too late. The city was closing in, the tabloids buzzing, and I was drowning in doubt. But sometimes, just when you think the story's over, life throws you a curveball. Let's see how this one plays out. I spent that night walking. No driver, no penthouse, just me and the Brooklyn streets, rain hammering down like it wanted to wash me away. It was 3 a.m. when I hit the bridge, the one stretching over the East River, lights flickering off the water like a million little lies. My tux was a soggy mess, the umbrella long gone, and my phone buzzed in my pocket. Ignored calls from my team, a text from Claire. Your waitress has a past. Check X. I didn't bother. Victor's smear campaign was in full swing, spinning Lila's old debts into some gambling scandal, but I knew better. She wasn't the mess here. I was. I leaned on the railing, staring at the dark current below, and let the weight hit me. I'd lost her once to ambition, and now, maybe again, to my own damn ego. The rain hadn't let up, a steady drizzle that matched the knot in my chest. I found her address from an old college buddy. A walk-up in Bed-Stuy, brownstone crumbling but stubborn, like it was holding on out of spite. I stood outside, soaked, clutching that beat-up umbrella from Chicago, like it was a lifeline. My heart hammered as I climbed the steps and knocked, the sound echoing in the quiet hall. I stood there, rain streaking my face, and typed back. I'll be there. 8 a.m. Then I walked, not to the plaza, but straight to that diner in Brooklyn. 4 hours to kill, and a heart pounding too hard to care. Joe's was a hole-in-the-wall joint, chipped red booths, grease in the air, the kind of place that hadn't changed since the 80s. I slid into a corner seat at 7:45, hands jittery around a mug of burnt coffee, the rain still tapping the windows. At 8 sharp, the bell above the door jingled, and Lila walked in. No uniform, just a denim jacket and those paint-splattered jeans I remembered. She spotted me, hesitated, then sat across from me, her eyes guarded but steady. "You look like hell," she said, voice dry, nodding at my damp clothes. "Feel like it too," I shot back, managing a half smile. You texted. That means something? She leaned back, arms crossed, studying me like I was a puzzle she didn't trust. Means I'm tired of running from this. Whatever this is. But don't get it twisted, Ethan. I'm not here to save your ass. Didn't ask you to, I said, meeting her gaze. I just want to know you, the you now, not the one I left behind. She sighed, picking at a crack in the table. The me now's a mess. Mom's gone, Dad's barely hanging on, and I've been scraping by, waiting tables, teaching art classes when I can. Jamal, he's safe, steady. He asked me last month, and I said yes because it made sense. But, I pressed, heart in my throat. But then you showed up, she said, voice low, eyes flicking up. Blew up your fancy life right in front of me, and I couldn't stop thinking about that damn umbrella, those nights in Chicago. I don't know if I love him, Ethan. Not the way I... She stopped, biting her lip, and the air between us thickened. Lila, I'm not here to wreck your world, I said, leaning forward. I've done enough of that. But seeing you at the Waldorf, it woke me up. I've been sleepwalking through this life I built, and you're the only real thing I can't shake. She stared at me, then reached into her bag and pulled out a sketch pad. Old, edges worn, the one she'd carried in college. She flipped it open, and there I was. That sketch from 10 years ago, me under the streetlight, eyes bright with dreams. I kept it, she said, voice soft. Even when I hated you, I couldn't let it go. My throat tightened, fingers brushing the page. I don't deserve that. No, you don't, she said, a faint smile tugging her lips. But here we are. The bell jingled again. A guy walked in, mid-30s, broad shoulders, a quiet vibe. Lila tensed, and I knew. Jamal? I asked. She nodded, eyes dropping. He spotted us, paused, then walked over, hands in his pockets. Lila, he said, voice calm but firm. This him? Yeah, she said, standing. Jamal, this is Ethan. Ethan Jamal. I stood too, sizing him up. Not a threat, just a guy caught in my mess. Look, man, I started. I'm not here to... He cut me off, looking at Lila. You didn't tell me he was back. After the gala, I figured something was up. But this? He shook his head. You're still in it, aren't you? She swallowed, eyes wet. I don't know what I'm in, Jamal. But I can't lie to you. I need to figure this out. He nodded, slow, pain flashing across his face. Then figure it out. I'm not going to be the guy you settle for. He turned to me, voice steady. She's worth more than your money, Carter. Don't forget that. Then he walked out, the bell ringing behind him. Lila sank back into the booth, hands trembling. I just broke his heart, she whispered. Because of you? No, I said, sitting too. Because of us. And I'm not asking you to jump back in. I just want a chance to know you again. No pressure, no fairy tale. She looked at me, long and hard, then nodded. Coffee's a start. That was 6 months ago. We didn't rush it. No grand gestures, just slow steps. Coffee at Joe's turned into walks in Prospect Park. Her sketching while I worked on my laptop, like old times but new. She's different now. Tougher. Quieter. Her edges sharpened by loss. I'm not the same either. Less cocky. More scarred. She's back in art school part-time, teaching kids in Harlem, and I've scaled back at SecureSphere, pouring cash into a foundation for arts programs in places like Southside. The tabloids had their field day. Billionaire's waitress love costs him billions. And yeah, I'm down to hundreds of millions now, not billions. Lila teases me about it, calls me her struggling startup guy. Last month, we opened a small gallery in Harlem, not the Met, but hers. Her name on the sign, Mensa Arts. She cut the ribbon, kids from her classes cheering, and I stood back, watching her glow. It wasn't a boardroom win, but damn, it felt better. Her apartment's tiny, all light and paint cans, and I'm there more than my penthouse these days. Sometimes she paints while I work, and it's messy, real, us figuring it out day by day. I won't lie, it's not easy. Trust's a slow build, and some mornings I miss the clean lines of my old life, the deals and the certainty. But then Lila looks up from her canvas, paint on her cheek, and smiles. Not at the billionaire, just at me. And I know why I walked away that night. Life doesn't hand you perfect timing for love. You've got to grab it, flaws and all. So here I am, on a bridge again, looking at the water, lighter than I've ever been. Maybe happiness isn't a finish line. It's daring to start over one step at a time. And that's enough for now. Hey, loved Ethan and Lila's journey? Hit subscribe for more stories like this, and drop a comment. What's your second chance story? Thanks for sticking with me. See you in the next one. Was I chasing a memory? Some college kid's fantasy, instead of letting her live her life? The thought gnawed at me, cold and sharp, until my phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something, call it gut, call it hope, made me swipe it open. A text. Still black coffee. Still paint on Tuesdays. Meet me at Joe's Diner if you're serious. My breath caught, the screen glowing in the dark. Lila. No promises, no forgiveness, just a crack in the door.